Hello everyone and welcome back to Stately's Office Hours. If you haven't joined us before, you might not know that this is a weekly live stream that we're doing where we want to share what the latest things that we're working on at Stately and with XState, and also answer any of your questions, take any of your feedback that you've got. How it works is you can always ask us questions on YouTube on the channel. You can always tweet us using hashtag Stately Office Hours. It's very unpopular, that hashtag. Not many people have been bothering using it. So go on, make my day, make it worth me checking Twitter to do it. You can also join us on our Discord, and that's via the discord.com invite you can see below. And in there we have an Office Hours channel where you can ask questions in there, and I'll pick those up too. So today you've got the three of us. And so I'm Laura. I do the developer and designer relations here. This is David. David, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the founder of Stately, and I also do a lot of development. Although, yeah, eventually my teammates will kick me off development, but for now I'm holding on strong.
And Matias, also known as Anderist, will you introduce yourself?
I'm a front-end / JavaScript developer, and I help out with the development at Stately, and I have been helping out before joining to make XState awesome.
and you have.
And hopefully.
Yeah. For sure.
We love being able to share all the great stuff that Stately and XState are doing with all of our office hours friends. And this week, of course, is no exception. David, would you like to tell us what you've got to announce this week?
Sure thing. So in the past 2 office hours, we previewed the visualizer. We gave a soft release to everyone watching the office hours. And it's awesome that we have almost 100 users already, even though we're not publicly blasting it out yet. It's just really awesome to see that usage and all of the cool machines that you're making in the registry. And so today, what I literally did just now was we made the XState visualizer repository open source. So you could go to github.com/statelyai/xstate-viz and take a look at it yourself. Now, we hope that you use this to peek around at the internals, maybe suggest a few improvements, report some issues, make some awesome PRs, and help us out with documentation, and all around just making this as awesome of a visualizer as possible. So yeah, if you have any questions or feedback, please let us know in the Office Hours channel or in the Viz Help channel on the Discord. So enjoy.
And is there a particular reason why we've chosen to make this open source, David?
Yeah, and so XState, of course, itself is open source, and we want the visualizer itself to be open source as well. This has been a huge ask from the community for the last couple years, actually, for many reasons. First of all, the old visualizer, although it is open source, it's running on an older version of XState. And so with this one, we want to keep it up to date. And we also, we know that we have a lot of people in the community who actually do know a lot about some of the things that we're using in the XState visualizer, such as ELK. And of course, there's a whole lot of React in there. And so we're excited to see your contributions and see just how you could improve like the layout or some of the UI, or maybe even port it to Vue, or pull parts out and use it, or even find a way to host it locally, which you can completely do if you're using the visualizer. So having it open source just opens up a whole world of possibilities, for you, the developer, to contribute back to this project that we've worked really, really hard on for the last couple of months.
Yeah, you can help us make it better. Mm-hmm. And actually that brings us to one of the questions that we had today that Santi asked us. Can you share more details about David's tweet? Laura Kalbag has some big plans for making the docs even better. Because I think that documentation is also one of those things where we could really do with people's help.
Yeah, I think that's a Laura question.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that I'm tasked with doing is trying to improve our documentation. So we've had the survey recently, as well as general feedback. And a lot of what we've been hearing is that the learning curve is huge when you're coming to XState, and also that you just want to be able to get going a lot quicker using XState, and we can help make the documentation better to do that. So I've got a lot of plans and ways that we can make the documentation better, but a lot of it is hearing from you what you need to know. Like, what would you find more useful? I'm really keen on trying to make it easier for people who are just getting started, people who maybe aren't the most experienced developers. Like, how can we get them started with XState as well? Or rather, how can I get me started with XState as well? Because I'm really in that situation where I am not the programmer that the other developers that I'm working with are. So I think that that's really our aim, is to try to make it so easy so that people aren't going to complain about the learning curve anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just quickly checking what the so far we've not got any questions, but we've got lots of very nice comments on the YouTube comments. So next up, we have yet another question from Santi. Thank you, Santi, for asking so many questions ahead of time. This is really great for us. Asking, I've read that you'll be doing hacking Mondays. Have you decided what you'll be working on?
That's a great question. So we at Stately, we sort of talked about just having days for us to be able to research and not just code all the time, just because a lot of what we do requires a lot of researching and reading up on material and even trying out some new ideas. And so Hacking Mondays are really for the team. So we have this overall goal of making development a better experience for developers by giving you a visual and robust way to model your application state, right now for JavaScript and TypeScript, but eventually for other languages. And there are so many ways that we could do that. Like, we could have a visualizer, inspector, just all these sorts of tools. But some of these things are things that we really have to experiment with, such as creating a form library, a router library, a VS Code extension, browser extension. And so Mondays are for really just diving into those ideas and figuring out, which one of those ideas are most promising. So personally, I will be, probably playing around with XState form or some things that I could add to the editor. I know that others might be working on like an extension or some of the open source stuff. So our Mondays are really just open for research. It's like a 20% day.
Like last Monday, I was looking at potential new tools to use for running our documentation, because that's something that's important, but it's difficult to get to when you're focusing on all the writing. What about you, Matias? What are you thinking about doing for your Hacking Monday?
I haven't really decided completely, but I was thinking about exploring the Visual Studio Code extension area, basically. But yeah, we'll figure out on Monday with Matt. So don't want to cross with him.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's so many different options for things that we could work on as well. That's it. It's infinite possibilities. Oh, we have a question in the YouTube comments from Carlos asking, can we see a Go port for XState?
That would be really interesting. Let's work on getting the Python ports finished, and then I think we could port Python over to Go. Python is sort of our template for how XState's going to look like in other languages. And the reason why we're choosing Python is because the original SCXML algorithm, it's written in pseudocode, and Python most closely resembles that pseudocode. So it reads very cleanly compared to other languages. And so we could use that strongly typed Python, or as strongly typed as you could make it, as a template to move to other languages. But I think, we might throw out another survey or maybe a casual survey in our Discord channel, just seeing which languages you would like to see most ported or have XState ported to, so that, we could prioritize those. I think you're muted.
Sorry, muted myself. I was to say that absolutely answers the question that Mogsy just asked us using the hashtag Stately Office Hours on Twitter. What is happening with the Python ports, and will there be ports to other languages too? Another vote here for Golang. If not the interpreter, just the plain pure function.
Yeah, and so that's a tricky thing, because the SCXML algorithm sort of describes the interpretation of a machine not in a pure way. It's just executing actions and doing stuff. But XState sort of takes a different approach. It translates that algorithm into something where you can use it as a pure function. And so parts of that get tricky. I think Matias has pointed out to me, like, there are some areas where it's more natural to execute actions as we're determining the resting states, or the resolve state and the resolve transitions, rather than just returning it in the state. So that's something that we have to wrestle with. But yeah, trust me, we are thinking about other languages, and just we have to have a good foundation for that first.
Totally. Oh, this is a fun question from Aris. What have you planned for the AI part in Stately AI?
Oh, so many things. Let me pull up my mind map. So I gave a talk, I think a couple years ago. I always think that things are a year ago, but ever since 2020, I have to add a year to that, just because I feel like we lost a year. But anyway, one of the talks I gave was about adaptive user interfaces. And so that falls in line with predictive analytics. And so the interesting thing with the state machine is, because you have all of these states, events, and transitions up front, you could, if you so choose, attach analytics to each of those transitions, and just have a complete picture, like a heat map of what like how the application is being used, what paths are being traversed, and you could see, okay, this path is being traversed more than the other one. Let's figure out why. That requires a lot of data. That requires a lot of machine learning as well. But the end result is you could sort of predict user behavior without necessarily having to track user behavior. So it's not really like we're not invading privacy. We're just we have a full, like a sitemap, and you could see from a 30,000-foot view a full picture of everything that's happening in the application. And so there's lots of practical applications for that. We could also create realistic simulations, like if you've ever run an end-to-end test where it's like, okay, I spent hours creating this end-to-end test, but it ends up that no one ever really does that scenario, then that's where something like analytics would be really, really helpful in determining which tests are the most important. So yeah, there's a lot of plans for the AI parts, which is partly why I got that domain.
This is going back a little bit from Horatio. How can you clarify if using XState as an orchestrator is different from the normal way to use it?
Sure. So what I mean by that is that XState as an orchestrator doesn't mean that XState is playing every single one of the instruments. I think a lot of the times we think of a state management library as the state, it controls all of the state, sort of like Redux. You have to store basically all your state there. Otherwise, it feels disjoint from if you're handling states in the framework or some other state management library. With XState, it's really about orchestrating states. So you could choose to have it control as much or as little state as you want, and instead just talk to various parts of your application or to external services too. And so that's what I mean by an orchestrator.
That makes sense. Now, just to remind the people, if you want to ask questions, you can ask them in the YouTube comments or using hashtag Stately Office Hours on Twitter, or in the Discord. I just noticed that as you were speaking, someone was typing in the Office Hours channel, but they didn't finish asking their question. But we do have another question from our friend Santi, who asks, XState and Stately Mug, Hoodie, when?
I think that's something we have to figure out with our design team. So we have we're working with an agency to make XState and Stately look as great as possible, and also function as great as possible too. But yeah, we have some really interesting design ideas for mugs and hoodies and stuff. So I think, maybe in the future we will open up a store, especially as it gets to the fall and winter months, because I love a Stately hoodie.
Yeah, and the designs that we're seeing so far are looking really, really gorgeous. So it will be something that you actually want to wear and have on mugs and things like that. None of this rubbish that you pick up at conferences that you think, oh, well, I want a mug, but do I want that in my house?
Right. Yeah, you want something classy, not something that's just advertising the entire thing.
Totally. We got some really cool things going on. We have a question from Lloyd. Do you see a future for XState in the product and design world as well as engineering?
100%. In fact, that's one of our biggest goals is we're taking XState and really the Stately suite of tools outside of just developers' hands and more into the hands of designers and product managers too, because we feel like it's important to unlock application logic and let others who might not be as technical really understand what's going on in the applications. So not relying on user stories or out-of-date diagrams, but rather relying on the actual code as it's visualized in a diagram that should be easy to understand. And so even when you're working with designers, they are creating state machines and mock-ups and user flows and all of that. And so basically one of our hypotheses is we should be able to take those and actually put it in the code and have both of them live side by side and always be up to date with each other. So one of our biggest goals is making application logic more accessible. And in bringing XState to the product and design world, that's definitely within our goals.
Yeah, that was absolutely one of the biggest appeals for XState for me, because as someone who I initially come from a design background, but also become a developer, but I still very much think in that visual way. And I can really see the improvement of the relationship between people working together on multidisciplinary teams. Nobody likes a situation where you're throwing things over the wall for each other to look out and to design from or to develop from. And so it can really help improve the relationships that we have in our teams.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Ronald on the Discord. Ronald Borman asks, you just talked about investigating other doc tooling. Does that mean ViewPress is out of favor?
I think we're weighing our options right now. We have a lot of requirements. We want to make the documentation interactive. And you can do that with ViewPress. We're also taking a look at Astro. We're taking a look at Next.js. I know Matt Pocock is in the chat somewhere. He's supposed to be on vacation this week.
He's supposed to be on holiday.
Yeah, Matt.
Go away, Matt.
go drink your pina coladas. But anyway, we're exploring different documentation technology right now. Nuxt content is also up there. So there's just a lot of criteria that we're figuring out as well. But we want to make it the most immersive, best documentation experience, not only for developers to be able to read, but also to be able to easily contribute to. And so if you have to do something foreign instead of just writing Markdown, then that's sort of a barrier to entry. So yeah, we're still looking.
Yeah, and if anyone does have feedback on, particularly if you've been using something and you found it easy to contribute to, if you could let us know in the Discord, that might help us sort of go in the right direction as well, because that would be really valuable insight. We can't rely on what I'm used to doing, because I'm used to some really hacky solutions, and it's really no fun having to maintain a system that's hacky like that as well.
Yeah.
I'm just looking to see if we have any more questions. Oh, fabulous. We have someone who's primarily a designer using XState. That's really, really cool.
It's wonderful.
So if anyone has any more questions they want to ask on the YouTube live or using the hashtag Stately Office Hours, I'm checking Twitter as I ask that, or in the Discord, checking the Discord as I ask that. And otherwise, I think that short and sweet is good for our office hours. So if we don't have any further questions, we'll wrap it up.
All right, sounds good. And just to let everyone know, this is the first step to the editor, is having that visualizer and the registry. So hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to have some previews out for the visual editor, which is 10 times more complex than the visualizer. So please take a look at the code base. Please contribute, wherever you feel like contributing. Report any issues as you see them, and help us out. And thank you so much for all of your feedback so far.
Yeah, thank you. We've had so much, and it's been really, really useful. So it's been really great talking to you all. We will see you at the same time again next week.
All right, see you all.